Prison food, the shocking truth of what inmates really eat. In prisons across the United States, more than 1.2 million inmates wake up every morning to the same routine. Metal doors slide open. Boots echo down concrete corridors. And within minutes, hundreds of prisoners begin lining up for the first meal of the day. Breakfast. But unlike the meals most people eat outside prison walls, prison food is not about comfort or taste. It's about cost, control, and survival. In many facilities, the entire daily food budget for one inmate can be less than $3. Meals are prepared in massive quantities. Ingredients are often purchased in bulk through government contracts. And in some prisons, the food being served has sparked lawsuits, protests, and federal investigations. Former inmates have described trays containing mysterious meat patties, powdered eggs, thin soups, and a loaf so infamous that prisoners gave it its own nickname: the Nutraloaf. So what do inmates actually eat? How are prison meals designed? And why have prison food programs become one of the most controversial parts of the correctional system? Today on Beyond the Bars, we examine the shocking, but fully documented, reality of prison food. If you value deeply researched prison documentaries like this, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue producing factual stories about life inside the world's most secure prisons. Now, let's step inside the prison kitchen. Feeding an entire prison. Running a prison is a massive logistical operation. Every day, correctional facilities must provide 3 meals to every inmate inside their walls. For large institutions, that means feeding thousands of people daily. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, which oversees more than 120 federal facilities, manages food service programs designed to operate on strict budgets. Each prison has a food service department, usually supervised by a trained food administrator. But the majority of the actual kitchen work is done by inmates themselves. Selected prisoners serve as cooks, dishwashers, food preparation workers, and serving line staff. The system is designed to keep costs low while providing job assignments that prisons consider part of rehabilitation programs. However, the scale of the operation is enormous. At large state prisons like Mississippi State Penitentiary, historically known as Parchman Farm, kitchen crews may prepare over 8,000 meals per day. Industrial ovens run for hours. Massive vats of beans, rice, and soup simmer continuously. And trays move down serving lines in an assembly line process that resembles a factory more than a restaurant. Meals must be served quickly. Security rules limit how long inmates can remain in dining areas. And every tray must meet minimum nutritional guidelines required by correctional policies. According to the American Correctional Association, prison meals are supposed to meet basic caloric and nutritional standards. In most U.S. facilities, inmates receive 2,400 to 2,800 calories per day, depending on the prison system and inmate activity levels. But the question many critics ask is not just about calories. It's about quality. Because while prison meals are designed to meet nutritional requirements on paper, what actually appears on the tray can look very different. What a typical prison meal looks like. Across the United States, prison menus vary depending on the state, facility, and budget. But many correctional systems publish sample meal schedules that reveal what inmates typically eat. A standard prison breakfast might include powdered scrambled eggs, 2 slices of bread, oatmeal or grits, and a small carton of milk. Lunch could consist of beans or lentils, rice, a vegetable such as cabbage or carrots, and sometimes a processed meat item like bologna. Dinner might include a soy-based meat substitute, pasta with tomato sauce, or chicken served with potatoes. Fresh fruits and vegetables are often limited due to cost and storage challenges. In many facilities, soy protein has become a major ingredient. Soy-based meat substitutes are significantly cheaper than traditional meat products. But some inmates have claimed that excessive soy consumption caused health problems. Several lawsuits have been filed over the issue, though courts have issued mixed rulings on whether soy-heavy diets violate constitutional protections. In Illinois, a group of prisoners filed a federal lawsuit claiming that prison meals contain dangerous levels of soy protein. However, courts ultimately ruled that the meals did not constitute cruel and unusual punishment under U.S. law. Despite these legal rulings, the debate over prison nutrition continues. And critics argue that the lowest-cost food contracts sometimes lead to meals that are barely recognizable as conventional food. The $3 food budget. One of the biggest factors shaping prison meals is budget pressure. State prison systems spend billions of dollars each year on incarceration. And food costs are one of the areas administrators constantly try to reduce. In some state systems, the daily food cost per inmate has been reported at between $2.50 and $3.50 per day. To stay within those limits, prisons rely heavily on bulk purchasing contracts. Large food distributors supply products designed specifically for institutions like prisons, military bases, and schools. These products are often cheaper than standard grocery store items. But they are also heavily processed and designed for long-term storage. Some correctional systems have gone even further by outsourcing food services to private companies. Companies like Aramark and Trinity Services Group have signed multi-million-dollar contracts to manage prison kitchens in several states. These privatization programs have sparked controversy. Investigations in states such as Michigan and Alabama documented complaints from inmates who claimed they were receiving smaller portions and spoiled food after private contractors took over kitchen operations. In 2015, Michigan officials reported hundreds of complaints about food service problems during an Aramark contract period. The company disputed many of the claims but acknowledged some operational issues. The controversy highlights a larger question that continues to shape prison systems today. How cheaply can prisons feed inmates? Before the food becomes unacceptable. Inside the prison kitchen. Behind the serving lines, prison kitchens operate under strict security procedures. Knives, cooking tools, and even cleaning chemicals must be carefully tracked. Every item that could potentially become a weapon is logged and monitored. Inmate kitchen workers are usually selected through screening processes. Prison administrators typically assign inmates with good disciplinary records to food service jobs. These jobs are considered valuable because they sometimes provide small wages and access to extra food. But kitchen work inside prisons can also be dangerous. Large industrial machines, boiling liquids, and crowded working conditions create constant risks. In some facilities, lawsuits have been filed after inmates suffered burns, cuts, or injuries while working in prison kitchens. Despite the risks, many prisoners compete for these jobs. Because compared to other prison assignments, working in the kitchen often means something extremely valuable. Better access to food. The infamous Nutraloaf. Among all prison meals served in the United States, few have become as controversial as a dish known as Nutraloaf. Unlike normal meals served in prison cafeterias, Nutraloaf is not designed for taste or comfort. It is used primarily as a disciplinary food. In several U.S. prison systems, inmates who violate certain rules, particularly those involving food misuse, throwing objects, or assaulting staff, may temporarily lose their regular meals. Instead, they are served Nutraloaf. The dish typically contains a mixture of ingredients blended together and baked into a dense loaf. Recipes vary by state, but common ingredients documented in correctional policies include beans, vegetables, soy protein, potatoes, bread crumbs, and occasionally ground meat substitutes. The mixture is baked into a solid block and cut into slices. The result is a compact food item designed to provide basic nutrition in a single portion. Correctional departments argue that Nutraloaf meets required nutritional standards and is intended as a behavioral control measure. However, inmates and prisoner rights advocates have strongly criticized the practice. Many prisoners describe the meal as extremely unpleasant in both taste and texture. Several lawsuits have challenged its use, arguing that it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. Courts in the United States have generally ruled that serving Nutraloaf for short periods does not violate constitutional protections, as long as it provides adequate nutrition. But the debate remains ongoing. And in many prisons, the mere mention of Nutraloaf carries a reputation that few inmates forget. When food becomes a form of control. Inside prison systems, food serves more than just a nutritional purpose. It is also deeply connected to discipline, routine, and order. Meal times structure the daily rhythm of prison life. Most facilities operate on tightly scheduled food service windows. Inmates may have less than 20 minutes to finish eating before returning to their housing units. Correctional officials argue that strict meal schedules are necessary for security. Moving hundreds or thousands of inmates through dining halls requires precise coordination. But the control of food can also influence inmate behavior. In some prisons, inmates who break rules may temporarily lose access to dining halls and instead receive cell-delivered meals. These meals are usually simpler and smaller than standard cafeteria trays. Former correctional staff interviewed by journalists have acknowledged that food restrictions can act as a behavioral deterrent. However, critics argue that these measures can sometimes cross into excessive punishment. In 2014, a federal lawsuit involving a Virginia prison challenged the prolonged use of restricted diets. The court ultimately ruled that short-term use of disciplinary meals was constitutional if nutritional standards were maintained. Still, prisoner advocacy groups continue to monitor the practice. Because inside prison walls, something as basic as a meal can become part of a larger system of control. The rise of the prison ramen economy. In many prisons, the food served in the cafeteria is only part of the story. Another food system exists inside prison walls. It is known among inmates as the commissary economy. Most correctional systems allow prisoners to purchase limited items through a prison store called the commissary. These items often include instant noodles, tuna packets, chips, peanut butter, coffee, and snack foods. But among all commissary products, one item has become especially important. Instant ramen noodles. Ramen is cheap, easy to prepare with hot water, and highly calorie-dense. Because of these qualities, it has become a form of informal currency inside prisons. A widely cited study by sociologist Michael Gibson Light documented how ramen noodles replace traditional prison currency like cigarettes in many facilities. Inmates use ramen packets to trade for services, favors, or other items. A single pack might be exchanged for laundry services, haircuts, or help with legal paperwork. The study described ramen as one of the most stable commodities in prison barter economies. Because unlike money, ramen can always be eaten. And when prison meals leave inmates feeling hungry, ramen becomes more than just food. It becomes a valuable resource. Reports of spoiled and contaminated food. Although many prison kitchens operate under regulated health standards, reports of food safety problems have surfaced in several states. Journalists and inspectors have documented cases involving expired food products, moldy bread, spoiled meat, and improperly stored ingredients. In 2016, investigative reports in Alabama revealed that prison kitchens had served food that inspectors described as unfit for human consumption. State officials later acknowledged serious sanitation issues in several facilities. Similarly, in Michigan, inmates filed numerous complaints during a period when food services were managed by a private contractor. Some prisoners claimed they were served rotten apples, maggot-infested meat, and contaminated food trays. Correctional authorities investigated many of the claims. Some allegations were confirmed, while others remained disputed. The contractor responsible for the food service faced fines from the state for contract violations. Food safety inside prisons is supposed to be monitored through regular inspections. But oversight can vary significantly between states and facilities. Because prisons are closed environments, many problems only become public after lawsuits, whistleblowers, or investigative journalism bring them to light. Why some inmates are still hungry. Despite the existence of regular meals and commissary systems, many inmates report feeling hungry. Several factors contribute to this issue. First, the portion sizes in prison meals are carefully controlled to meet calorie guidelines but remain inexpensive. For prisoners performing physically demanding work assignments, these portions may feel insufficient. Second, some inmates arrive at prison with different dietary habits than the institutional meals provide. Highly processed cafeteria food can feel unsatisfying compared to normal diets. Third, commissary purchases depend on money. Not all inmates have family members or outside support who can deposit funds into their prison accounts. Those without financial support must rely entirely on standard prison meals. Sociologists studying prison conditions have documented how this economic difference can create inequalities among inmates. Those who can afford commissary items may supplement their diets regularly. Those who cannot must depend solely on what the prison provides. And inside prison culture, that difference can carry significant social consequences. Religious diets behind bars. Food inside prison is not only about cost and discipline. It is also connected to religious rights. In the United States, inmates are legally allowed to request diets that align with their religious beliefs. This includes kosher meals for Jewish inmates, halal diets for Muslim prisoners, and vegetarian diets for certain faith groups. These programs expanded after several federal court rulings and the passage of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, RLUIPA, of 2000, which protects religious practices in government institutions. Some prison systems provide pre-packaged kosher meals prepared under religious supervision. Others offer vegetarian meal plans that meet halal requirements. However, these programs have also created logistical challenges for prison administrators. Kosher and halal meals are typically more expensive than standard prison food. As a result, some prison systems have attempted to limit access to these programs, which has occasionally led to legal disputes. Courts have generally ruled that prisons must provide reasonable religious accommodations unless they can demonstrate serious security or cost concerns. Even inside prison walls, food remains closely tied to identity, belief, and personal dignity. The reality of prison food. For many people on the outside, prison food is often the subject of jokes or curiosity. But for the millions of people who experience incarceration, it is part of daily survival. Prison meals are designed to meet minimum nutritional standards while staying within extremely tight budgets. Some facilities manage to maintain acceptable conditions. Others have faced lawsuits, investigations, and criticism over food quality. The reality is complex. Prison kitchens must feed thousands of people every day under strict security rules and limited funding. The result is a system where food becomes more than just a meal. It becomes part of prison culture. Part of prison economics. And sometimes part of prison conflict. For inmates, every tray represents something simple but essential. Another day survived inside the system. Prison food may seem like a small part of incarceration. But as we've seen today, it reveals a much deeper story about how prisons operate. If you found this documentary informative, please like the video and subscribe to Beyond the Bars. Your support helps us continue producing factual stories that uncover the realities of life inside the world's most secure prisons. And if there's another prison system or topic you want us to investigate next, let us know in the comments. Until next time.